All right, Pot of Gold, welcome back. I'm Brett. I'm here with Mike. Grant, the intern, GZF baby, an undisclosed location behind the glass, running the boards, currently on hold with a certain law firm. A lot to get into tonight. It was going to be the college football preview, and it still will be, but there's some LSU breaking news hitting the wires. Maason Smith, first team All-American, preseason All-American defensive tackle. Maason Smith suspended first game. But before we
It's a
kind of
hit.
jump into
No,
that,
Brett,
yeah,
it's a hit. It's a whack job. I just tweeted it out. This investigation needs an investigation. This is bullshit.
yes.
We're going to get into this in a second, but I want everyone to be aware. We do have a college preview show to go through. We're going to talk about LSU season, some predictions, top tens, final four predictions, which are kind of useless this time of the year, but it's fun nonetheless. Some underrated players throughout the country. We can toss some names out there for Heisman odds, but make no mistake, Maason Smith's news just broke as we hit record, and we are going to do everything we can to deliver you that breaking news a day late and a dollar short. And so with that, I think we have a message from our sponsors. Are you tired of fumbling through awkward conversations with your kids?
Touchdown. Tim Tebow's here to help keep your family's online experience clean and safe. It's like having a quarterback for your internet, ensuring only family-friendly content makes the cut.
So team, whether you're a parent or just believe in a clean online game plan, tune in and discover how Tim Tebow's parental control porn blocker is scoring big for families everywhere.
Let's keep it pure and play smart. Huge shout out to our sponsor
Thanks,
for the evening. Yeah, it's been great. Obviously, Swamp King, Tiger King, Florida documentary will be discussed, and the highs and lows of it. The Tim Tebow documentary, but yeah, man, I guess we just kind of kick it off. We were literally about to hit the go live button, and Grant's like, whoa, and I feel like, look, this doesn't happen a lot, but there's a lot of times like I get in the studio and Grant's purposely on mute, like not having his mic, telling me he can't hear me. So like I'm thinking this is a complete like scam of whatever he's trying to do to throw us off before we get started. And he's like, Maason Smith suspended first game, which obviously feels like it's not legit, but according to Wilson Alexander of The Advocate, I think everyone's kind of running with it on Twitter. I'm trying to
Lawn confirmed.
Well, then fuck, then I guess it's gold.
It's the Odyssey.
God. Yeah, man. I mean, that's a dagger. It's I don't know. I had
It's
this
a fucking
feeling.
hit, man. It's a hit. Like you can't a week and a half before we play Florida State, we're going to do an investigation on Maason Smith. No, this has been going on.
I like whack job better. I like whack job better.
Right. This is a whack job. I understand that. But we have to cater to a region. Yeah.
If this were a Bama player, he'd be suspended for a quarter in week 2 when we played Grambling or Southern.
For Mountain Valley sister, whoever it is. Not the game that, quite frankly, determines your future until November. I mean, like that really defines who you are right out of the gates. Florida State's a great football team. Make no mistake about it. This is a coin flip game. Like this is a very close matchup. Florida State's improved. So is LSU. In my opinion, I feel like, I'd bet on LSU to win, but by no means am I comfortable with saying that. And you take away the main reason of that confidence, which is a return of Maason Smith in the middle, which completely changes your game plan with your personnel, and just adds so much value to LSU. Now that's ripped away from you, I'm not as confident. And this is a big hit. Like this is a big whack job. And the fact that it's now coming out, people are starting to chirp that this is from his recruitment. This goes back well beyond Brian Kelly or any of the motions that Maason Smith has had to overcome and go through. And for one, not to mention signing an NIL deal with the main, hustler of the town, Professor Gordon, which is fine. But like this type of suspension, all of a sudden getting popped up. I mean, the first reaction all of us are having is, what is illegitimate benefits in 2023?
Sorry, officer, I didn't know I couldn't do that. I mean, like, literally, we're in the free-for-all Wild West of college football. When was the last time you heard of someone getting suspended for an NCAA violation?
So they had to go back. They had to snip through his recruitment to LSU to find something, some benefit that he was awarded that's illegitimate. And you know what? It's not that big of a deal. We're just going to fine you one game. Just happens to be your final money bag year, a national championship contending team versus a top 5, top 10 team in Florida State to open your season. No big deal. Big fucking deal. Big fucking deal.
I will say, look, to look on the sunshine end of it, immediately, the first thing that this podcast thought of when it's like, does this have to do with Gordon? If that's the case, how many other people are involved? Like, is this about to be the rolling suspensions where all of a sudden, remember that game we went to where North Carolina had like 11 dudes suspended or whatever? It's like, is that what's about to happen?
Like getting out ahead of this? Like, are we about to
Right.
get fucked against Florida State just out of precaution?
And so, I mean, it's a little bit better to hear that it probably dates back to the Ed Orgeron regime. You know, one last little, like, you know, tip of the cap to Edo. Hey man, I'm still just going to say thanks for the title and let's part ways. But yeah, I came into this pod. I came into this pod that I was going to have the take of like Maason Smith might be eased into this Florida State game. He's still not participating in like the scrimmages. It's like, let's not get too carried away. I think you're going to see a lot more rotation. To now, I'm like more concerned because now there's no rotation. There's rotation. It's not what we were expecting.
That's a big hit to that rotation. I mean, like, that's the problem there is that you're comfortable with the backups of Jefferson and Guillory, right? You're comfortable with those two being able to spell the best defensive tackle tandem in the nation. Now you remove one of those important elements, you have a rotation of one elite defensive tackle and two guys that are supposed to be depth players. So not an ideal time for this to happen. We were already on the fence on whether Maason Smith would be a full go against Florida State. We know he'd be strapping up. We know he'd be good to go, but he has an
Trayvon Diggs style strapping up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not for everybody. But I think Maason Smith is as vital as a piece of this defense as there is. And so this is not something to take lightly. This is a big fucking deal.
You know, I mean, I don't know. I guess it was last week we did the defensive preview. Go check that out if you happen to miss it and you're just jumping in for some Maason Smith news. But it was, you have to game plan for so many people. As soon as your game's over and you have LSU on the schedule, you got to figure out how to control Maason Smith, Harold Perkins, and then the Jack linebacker. And all of a sudden you take that away. It's like, yeah, you know, Wingo is a returning all SEC dude, like a legit player, but Maason Smith's your potential first defensive lineman drafted in the NFL type of guy. And to not have him rolling out week 1 to set the tone, even just like first guy off the bus, you want it to be a guy like Maason Smith. I think it's a big hit. I wish we would have known about this week. Could he not have served this suspension last year? You can take every game you want.
This better not be a hamburger. Like this better not be a Jim Harbaugh situation where
our boy better got hooked up.
Yeah, because if Jim got 3 games for hamburgers, Maason Smith better taken like 1 chicken finger from Cane's without paying for it. I mean, like, if that's the extent that we're going to here,
our crab legs incident is a 3-piece, which is like $10 now. So I don't really blame them.
$10 for a 3-piece.
It's been a minute since I've been to Cane's, but you know, I'm on top of inflation like no other. I've got a steady eye on prices.
Well, I didn't know if you were in the mid-tier fast food game. I
just don't eat Cane's.
Mid-tier.
Old school Cane's, elite. New Cane's, it's fine. It's whatever.
Just like everything. Just an old soul in a new world.
They got corporate on
great
us.
song,
They got corporate on us. That in a small town.
So being outdone by Oliver Anthony's Richmond of north of Richmond. Great song.
I figured you'd like that one.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Learned it.
Oh, did you?
Let's go here. Let me grab
Let's
mine.
do
No,
it.
we're not doing it live. We're not doing it live. I'll do it when it's crisp. I'll do it when it's crisp, when I can hammer
Bullshit
that
pay.
Yeah, overtime hours. So anyway, Maason Smith's going to be bitching about that soon. He'll embrace that song come week 1. But
It
yeah,
sucks. It's kind of a shitty way to start the pod. We were gonna have a little hype about some scrimmages and who we think is gonna break out. We're so close. Like we're under the 2-week mark. We might even be in single digits. Are we at 9 days, 10 days? Like we're there.
I think we're at 10 tomorrow.
And we're there. Like we have arrived.
I mean, the only thing that could have been worse was us finding out like next month, like Monday,
that Denver Harris is a piece of shit and he sucks, and that Aaron Anderson has not supplanted Kyron Lacey, and that I mean, there's a few other things that could have happened. So listen, obviously we're recording this at 8:30 p.m. the night of the news, so you're going to be listening to this unless you're one of the handful of live listeners who get to see this live. This is what this is for. But we're going to be tracking these updates. We've got GZF baby on the P's and Q's going through that's Grant, by the way.
Yeah, this isn't necessarily like news about the case. It's just news of how Wilson is the person that broke.
Frank,
he was in on it. He's in on it.
So
Frank Wilson illegally paid Wilson
Wilson
Smith.
Alexander.
Is that what you're putting out there?
Wilson Alexander breaking the news.
Tweet that. Tweet that.
Grant GF.
Apparently his fiance is a lobbyist for Adams and Reese, and I'm assuming Adams and Reese is a law firm that represents LSU, or they represent obviously people in Louisiana. They're from New Orleans.
We got some Florida State fans in the live chat kind of checking it out. Got to say, as an FSU fan, while I'm happy Smith isn't going to be there, it's still odd it's happening so soon with little context. Yeah, I mean, I told Mike before we fired it up, I knew that fucker Mike Norvell knew something when he had that little trot and incident with the cameraman or the reporter. Like he was too. There's
he had it up his sleeve. He had it up his sleeve.
He had this. He's been keep. This fucker. I'm out on him now. He's not my favorite.
I'm cutting you off too much.
No, Norvell. No.
Okay.
I'm out on Norvell.
Okay. Yeah. No. Mike Word in the chat. Thanks for the comment. But yeah, that's it's certainly odd timing. And we're not sitting here being serious thinking that Florida State has anything to do with this.
I don't know.
It's easy to make the assumption that this is odd, right? Like something's off here, that of all games, of all times, 10 days until kickoff, we're going to slap Maason Smith with some type of infraction from his recruitment days. It doesn't smell right. And that's what immediately led to us thinking, is this deeper? Is this an NIL deal? Is this something to do with like Gordon cooking the books and he got caught? Like, what is the deal here? And obviously, if it goes back to recruitment, that's a little bit of fresh air because there's not a lot of those players truly left on this team that are contributing.
This also shows you like how good of a king Saban is. Like Saban schedules Texas week 2 just in case somebody maybe has a gun in their car or gets caught stealing a Big Mac. We got a little ULL.
They'll step it up and play Duke every now and then.
Yeah, it's like we're gonna ease into this just in case somebody if we were playing Florida State week 2, we'd be like, oh great, Maason Smith's gonna have an extra week. He's gonna be ready to go. So once again, that's why I hate playing these premier games week 1.
And that's respect to Florida State. Like Florida State is a very good opponent. I don't think Florida State loves playing LSU right out of the gates with a promising season on.
They don't have that week 0 game this year, so they're very scared.
Well, I don't necessarily think they're scared. I think they're very confident in their abilities this season. And if you don't have to fucking play an SEC team right out of the gate, like let's kind of save some of these growing pains for when we have to play Clemson and we have to play, Miami,
Syracuse,
or whoever, right? Like let's dominate our conference. Let's not have to play LSU. LSU. On the flip side, we have to go through the gauntlet of the SEC.
Yeah.
So why add another team that is going to be pre-ranked in the top 10, returning a very hungry squad when we can go back and forth about the scheduling component of this. It's the timing of this hammer that's being dropped on this particular player from his recruitment days. Like that's, and I don't know, I'm hoping this is not just all right, timeout. This might be a bigger deal than we think. So for anything, he can't play against Florida State because this might go on for some time. That would be bad.
Don't even put that out in the ether.
So
yeah, that is interesting. Go ahead, Grant.
Some people are pointing out like maybe, this was actually, I don't know, but then he wouldn't have played week 1 last year. They're like, maybe this has been under investigation for a while, but like, why would we, like, is it something Brian Kelly has been knowing about, but he didn't want to show his cards and now it's just out there? You know what I mean? Like maybe, like there's no way that this just came down, because some of the reports are saying that he's been cooperating. There has been an investigation into him. It's not like this just popped up. There's been an investigation and he's been cooperating, and they still agreed that there should be a 1-game suspension. So it makes me wonder, like, has this been known the whole time? Brian Kelly tried to keep it under wraps. He went out and recruited some big-time defensive tackles, which we needed anyway. I guess it didn't really matter. Right. I don't know. You could think about it a lot of ways. Either way, it's bullshit. But it's just the timing's weird. Everything's weird. But if it's Wilson got a tip because his fiance is, working with this law firm and they're now trying to fight this. She has tits. Yeah, his fiance hopefully has tits. No,
fiance caught a tit. Yeah,
she caught a tip because she works with this law firm that could potentially be representing LSU to appeal this matter. I don't know. It's all.
I just want a fair fight. I want because this is a very good Florida State team. This is a very good, potentially very good LSU team. I think last year was a great game, but there was all of these, but we fumbled. But we didn't make an extra point. But Maason Smith was out. It's like, we got to do that shit all over again now, right? Like, I want to be able to go nose to nose with Florida State and truly get a great game with your best 11 against our best 11. And let's see what happens. Right. And that's what's frustrating about this, is because they are a good opponent. And I want to see how good we are right out of the gate. And I'm sure they want to see truly how good they are right out of the gate as well.
The good thing about this is, if things don't go our way, or maybe, Florida State moves the ball a little bit more than we like, we could just be like, guys, they didn't have the game plan for Maason Smith. Like, SEC,
that's the thing. It's like, that's going to be hanging over our head the whole time. It's just like, well, we're going to get Maason Smith back and we're going to be number 1. It's like, well, we still don't know.
I'm going to craft some tweets over the next 2 weeks and just save them in the drafts for just moments where, like, a defensive line guy's out of position. Like, Maason Smith would never. Like, this game doesn't count.
It seems like the consensus of people is like, what if we just played him? Like, what are they going to vacate our season?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
the NCAA probably would do some crazy shit like that.
Like, how funny would that be? How funny would that be?
At this point, everyone's just kind of put their finger in the SEC or the NCAA's chest and been like, we're doing whatever we want. It's like Urban Meyer's Florida. Like, we're just going to do it.
I know. It's tough, but we're about 20 minutes into this show. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to season preview, top 10s, the national perspective. So if there's anything breaking about Maason Smith any further, obviously we will, cut to that and be able to kind of divulge it and hypothesize and bitch and vent and gripe. But for now, I think we need to talk a little bit about this scrimmage that just happened, which they practiced for a couple hours and then they ran like 40 odd plays. I like
before we start, I did want to give a shout out because the friend of the program, Buddy Sanji, just like always cracks me up. And like everyone's asking questions in the press conference about like, who do you think is going to do this? He's like, how many plays you going to run, coach? And it just cracks me up, dude, because he just is writing his article about the Tigers are going to scrimmage for 60 plays and like this, and everyone else is like trying to work these like intricate stories about like, what have you seen with Hilton's stride? And it's just, it cracks me up every time where he's like, how many plays you going to run, Bob?
Yeah. And he's never ready when he's called upon by Mike Starball. Like whenever Mike calls on him, It's as if he just dropped in from another planet. And it's just like, all right, I'm ready to roll with my show now. It's like,
It's so
thanks to the
good.
guy next to me who just has his name across the title. But like, let me lead this shit.
I just had to shout out the GOAT because I feel like he doesn't get the love he deserves.
Yeah. So, the latest love that they have been kind of drooling over has been Caleb Jackson. He kind of won the day at the scrimmage. And I like what Brian Kelly said about the scrimmage, where this was truly about trying to identify who are the players we don't know about right now, who are the players that were on the verge of breaking into the lineup or being depended upon during big moments, and having seen them take a little bit of a turn for the better in their development. He mentioned Whit Weeks. He mentioned some of the younger wide receivers. He mentioned, what is Ashton Stamps going to look like against, these situations. So I think this had a lot to do with the development of the younger players and who's going to shine in these type of moments. Caleb Jackson, first glance, you watch the video, I remember this type of vibe whenever we were seeing clips from fall camp of Darius Geis, where he was a true freshman. And make no mistakes, I'm not saying that Caleb Jackson is a freshman version of Darius Geis. He keeps his hands in his pants. He doesn't go after the women, but eventually he will. It's just the nature of the beast at LSU.
Allegedly.
He will be that guy to carry us home. I think right now he's still raw. And those big moments shows that he's capable and that he's going to be a dude. And I can't wait to see him develop. But I think what Brian Kelly's trying to tell everybody is like, hey, don't crown this kid as our starting running back right now. I know how you people can get, and y'all need to kind of dial it back a little bit. Be excited that the kid had a couple great runs, but he also broke a tackle against Jordan Allen. He was also going against some scrubs at DB and linebacker that he shook out on the screenplay. Like, it looked really good, and he should have scored, and he did. And I think the effort was there. No one else really has jumped off the tape, regardless of who they're going against. So it is to be said, and it is validated for the praise, because we have been waiting for that. We've been itching for that. Is anyone at running back going to be a playmaker? Because we have playmakers everywhere. All we've been talking about is playmakers. Our quarterback is a playmaker. Can one of our running backs do it? And so I think the moment that anyone breaks anything beyond 30 yards, it is automatically like, that's it. Like, that's our guy. Like, and so I think he will be a dude. I don't expect Caleb Jackson to be a starting running back for LSU this season. I think he's going to contribute at some point. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know that he's even going to see the field against Florida State. He might, but it's one of those things that you see something like that and you're like, okay, at least I know that, like, if you can beat this dude out, like, there's people on this team in that running backs room that's going to be able to make plays. Like, DB is way, way more of a question mark than running back, because when you have so many dudes and honestly a pretty fair amount of experience in the running back room, you have to trust that at least one of those guys. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that almost worried me, because yeah, it was like a great run and everything, but it's like, I wanted something else to come out of the scrimmage as like the big pop of like, oh, well, Andre Sam is not going to be off the field. And I mean, they kind of did the putting your boy at corner. I just spaced out on his name, got the stinger.
Sage Ryan moved to corner.
But it's just like, I don't know. The big takeaway from the scrimmage was your third, fourth-ish string running back popping some plays. I'm like, okay, cool. That's cool for next year. Like, we're right here right now.
I love the no gloves of Caleb Jackson. Like,
until it doesn't work.
The only issue with that is the only other report from camp that we've gotten is he's fumbled twice. And so it's like, dude, this looks awesome. Like, Michael Ford did it. Not many people, else were able to do that. But the minute you drop that ball, like, you're putting gloves on. Like, there's no like, I don't wear gloves. Now you do until you stop dropping the football. So
it's Division I football. Like,
I love the bare hands with some tape on the, the proximal end of the digit. I think that would be, a fun look, especially when they wrap the helmets, when it kind of correlates back and forth with the fingertips and kind of the face mask. Anyway, but I think you're right. It's fun to see. I think it was excellent to know that he is talented enough to play in the SEC, and he's going to get some carries. But I think this is Noah Cain's starting job. I think if Josh Williams is healthy, it's going to be Josh Williams, and I think you're going to get a steady dose of Logan Diggs, followed by a mixture of guys in that second tier that Caleb Jackson has now proven he could probably be a part of. So I think that's where we're at with the running backs. I do think it's worth pointing out the Sage Ryan situation. He was moved to corner for the scrimmage, which, they say, and Kelly was very honest about it. And I liked his answer here. I don't know if this is a good politician and Kelly being able to turn things into positives, but he kind of sold me that they need a sure tackler at corner, and getting their best tacklers on the field leads me to believe that they feel like there's going to be a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and the quarterback is not necessarily going to have time to get beat deep, and that you're going to need to keep everything in front of you. And we're going to get the best players that can make sure tackles, regardless of position, corner, nickel, safety, strong, weak, whatever. They're going to put the best tacklers on the field. And if Sage Ryan is able to kind of utilize his skill set to cover well, not elite, but well, and tackle elite, you might have something cooking there in this depleted, to say the least, depth chart at defensive back, and unproven to an extent.
It's a little worrisome when you think about the potential of LSU just being like, yeah, we're putting 4 safeties on the field every play. Like, we're going to put Greg Brooks in the nickel. We're going to have Major Burns and maybe Sam back there. And then we're going to have Sage Ryan at corner. It's like, that's a little worrisome. I will say, I think it could potentially be a great move for Sage Ryan, because at safety, you could tell the dude has a lot of athletic ability, 5-star player. It just felt like it wasn't there. Like, he didn't really Grant Delpit or, go down the list of safeties of LSU where, like, you see him on the field, you're like, fuck, man, 3 years, that's a problem for 3 years for teams. It just,
he certainly looked like a player from a 3A school that needed time to develop against SEC talent. I think he is a dominant athlete that was so used to playing against fucking children and just like running circles around them. And I'm sure he went up against some good teams, like in playoffs and all that. But I'm talking about day in and day out throughout his career. I think it may have taken him a little bit longer to adjust to this level of athleticism and speed. Does he have the strength and athleticism to match it or exceed it? For sure. But I think it was like that innate second nature that you're so, like, the instinctual quick reactions that you're so used to seeing from LSU DBs, especially the ones that come in as 5 stars. You're just like, there's a little bit missing here. You're already undersized. So you need to make up for it with elite ball skills and athleticism. And he's always kind of one step short. But I think the glimmer of hope that I saw last season was against Bama, where he hustled to the football and ripped the ball out on the sideline. Now, bullshit play, Bama ended up being in possession. But that play was kind of like the first over the mountain, over the hump for me with Sage Ryan. It's like, this dude's going against the #1 team, and he's hustling down the sideline and doing a fucking honey badger move. Like, he's ripping balls out when it looks like they have a red zone play. Now, I think this is just to see if he can do it. I think Deuce Chestnut is going to start.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it could help Sage Ryan kind of being on an island and not being in the back end. And
Grant, you got something?
I was just going to say, I think the thing with Sage and why he gets so many opportunities too is because of his football IQ. It seems like he came in understanding the game very well. He seems to be in the right spot. But, like you said, Mike, to your point of playing in 3A ball or whatever it was, he wasn't quite physical, big enough, whatever. But I think he's always seems to be in the right spot, and he understands the playbook. I mean, they wouldn't be putting him out there and moving him 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks before the home opener if they didn't think he could handle it mentally. So I think that's the biggest thing for him is he can do that.
We mentioned it last week. Also, it's like we can give these dudes a little bit of a pass to say, hey, it's possible they were mentally slow because it's a new system again. It's like year 2, we could see that jump. So it just means to me that they want him on the field.
He's going to be on the field. I think Sage Ryan's going to find a spot on the field. They want Greg Brooks on the field. They want Major Burns on the field. And and they want Zy Alexander on the field. Like, and it up to this point, they've wanted Deuce Chestnut. So I think those are your handful of players that you're going to see starting at some form or fashion, some rotation against Florida State, against a very, very good wide receiver and tight end crew at Florida State.
Good size, like probably as good a size as we're going to go up against from wide receivers. And yeah, that's the thing. It more worries me that the coaching staff is worried Chestnut maybe isn't big enough or anything. And it's like, I don't know if we can just put this dude on an island number 2 corner. That's my biggest takeaway from that. And they want to get Sage Ryan on the field.
Would be really cool if Denver Harris would just fucking check in.
Wouldn't it be nice?
That would really just kind of put all of this at ease, you know.
If maybe LaTerrence Welsh was like our 4th, 5th corner and being a decent, probably contributor player, yeah, that would ease a lot of the anxiety going into or before this season.
And I think those anxieties are going to bleed into some of the season preview that we're about to discuss, and we'll get into the schedule in just a second. I just the last thing about the scrimmage that I'll say, two things. Zalance Hurd is obviously being intentionally rotated and intentionally viewed and repped in preparation for a starting position. And I think, make no mistake, and there's no secret out there, that Brian Kelly, when he's talking about the freshmen getting reps with the ones and breaking the lineup on offense, he's talking about Zalance Hurd. And he got a lot of time there. I don't know if it's going to happen against Florida State, going against Verse right out of the gates. I mean, you could see a little bit of dipping the toes here and there and getting reps. At some point this season, I think Emery's going to be your right guard and Hurd's going to be your right tackle. It may be week 5, but I think it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, I think by the time we play Auburn, the offensive line is going to look a tiny bit different than it does against Florida State. I agree.
The last thing I'll add here is Brian Kelly's not going to show a shit in these scrimmages. I mean, he has opened everything to every media outlet, friends, family, fans. Everyone knows how big of a stage LSU is on against Florida State week 1. They're learning the basics right now. They're teaching the fundamentals, and they're going through the root of the playbook. And I think now we're going to start seeing more of an evolution of that and really working on those complex plays focused on Florida State. And maybe there wasn't a strong emphasis. I mean, we hardly passed the ball down the field. It was very deke and dunk, very run oriented, very traditional. Malik Neighbors, Mason Taylor, nothing special. And at the end of the day, it was just like what we've been seeing in practice from reports. So that makes me feel like this scrimmage was no different than our practice 11 on 11. It was just so we could check the box and say we had a scrimmage. We got some of the young guys involved in kind of live scenarios with whistles and refs. And then now we're going to check in and focus on Florida State.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited for the season. I don't know if y'all saw this, but an incredible PR 101 move by LSU. On Twitter, they posted that picture of first, second, and third team preseason All-Americans.
Yeah.
And all the first team players were gold. Yeah. Second team was white. And then third team was as close to white as humanly possible, but it was gray. And it killed me. What an incredible move to be hey, we're just going to blur the lines. Just assume they're all second team. Don't look too far into it, boys. And it just
a lot of All-Americans.
What a great move.
So we can let's go through. We already went offense, defense, special teams. We talked about our team. We're going to probably focus more on Florida State coming up next podcast. So we won't go in too much detail with them. I think, in my opinion, we haven't rehearsed this, but if we just want to pull up the schedule and go through, game by game and a quick 15, 30 seconds of each game of what our thoughts are, what their strengths are. Do we feel like it's a win? Is this a coin flip? First, we can kind of probably throw out our predictions. For instance, hey, I think we'll go 11-1, and these are the 2 coin flip games. I don't feel like we can win both of these, right? And then we'll just kind of go through it like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. And just to kind of, it's like watching the Florida documentary. It's like you
Mhm.
get reminded how hard it is to win every game. And I know this was over a decade ago now. And it's like we got to watch not Tim Tebow, we got to watch Joe Burrow and company go 15-0, Cinderella story. And it's just like as much as I really like this team, I think even with the high ranking of preseason number 5, like I think people don't really understand that LSU is going to be a problem this year.
Right.
And it's just really hard for me to say that this team's just going to go 12-0.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. And,
Like
and
10-2 is more likely to me than 12-0. Like
yes,
I'm not even like,
yes.
you know what I'm saying? That one loss, sure, I think 11-1 is pretty it's probably what I would pick, but it's like I think it's more likely that they would lose 2 games than go undefeated.
I think their ceiling is undefeated. I think this team could, in the best case scenario, and that's not, you can't always say that every year. I didn't think it at all last year, right? Last year going into the season, it was like, I feel like this is a 9-3 team, right? Like I think we are able to reach 9-3, 10-2 would be phenomenal, right? I think this year 12-0 is the ceiling. I think that is your best case scenario, and that's definitely possible. I think your floor, I think this team's floor is 9-3. I think
I
this
agree.
team should be able to not easily, but take care of business and win 9 games, right? And only drop 3 of those with this talented roster and this schedule.
Well,
What's the
it
likely
may
scenario? I've got us going 11-1. I don't know what that one is, but like you said, it's so hard to go undefeated in this season. Anything can happen. Hell, 10 days before your opener, you could lose Maason Smith, right? In a toss-up game.
don't
Um,
say that, Mike. Don't say that.
a week before Alabama, you don't have somebody, or
Devin White gets suspended for targeting.
right,
Tyrann Matthew smoked some pot.
Harold Perkins fourth
Let's
quarter
not
the week
don't
before. But the point is, we don't have the dudes in like a Heisman Trophy winner and
maybe.
a depth chart at DB, for instance, to sit here and say, hey, if shit hits the fan, we're still going to win every game. Like that's every year there's always been adversity. The only year that seems like it was a perfect scenario was 2019, and that rarely ever happens, right? And so you're
And
going to
still you got lucky in an all not lucky, but you snuck away in an Auburn game. You completed a 3rd and 17 at Texas. A Bama game, as much as LSU kind of dominated, they were still in that game.
so
It's just hard.
you got to rein in the expectations or the realistic approach of what could happen, right?
And
Like that
yeah,
could happen. Like you could lose 2 or 3 games, worst case scenario. I think this team is going to be very good, and they are going to compete for the playoffs this year. I've got them going 11-1, and
yeah, I think it's more of like the goal is to get to the SEC championship
mhm.
game. Like it's like undefeated is maybe a year 4 Brian Kelly thing. You know, Nussmeyer year 2, we got everybody we want on the team. But this year, yeah, it just seems like one of those like, hey man, just grit and grind, get to that SEC championship game, hopefully with 1 loss, and you're right where you want to be at the end of the season. Like you said, I think LSU's floor is really high, and we lived through the Les Miles years of like the floor was super high, but the ceiling wasn't that far above the floor for the most
Mhm.
part, just because
Mhm.
of what happened. And I think it feels a little different there, but I
Yeah.
don't have this feeling of LSU losing a game and all of a sudden they lose the locker room and they lose 4 or 5 games because no one gives a shit anymore. Like that's just not really the culture that's been built. And like hopefully I'm not we're not clipping this and making fun of me in 3 months, but I don't feel like that. LSU got embarrassed by Tennessee and had every reason to just wave the white flag on the season and play in a decent bowl game and move on, and they didn't. And I think now this team has all the confidence in the world. And yeah, in a vacuum, LSU can beat every team on their schedule. They would be close to favored against every team on their schedule. Going into Bama is a difficult thing. We haven't won there in a long time, but we already showed you we can beat Alabama in a much more proven first round, 2 top 3 picks. Bama had them right there and beat them. So I think I think 11-1. I mean, 10-2 feels like the safer play, just to like ease your heart and be like, yeah, it's year 2. We're still building. Brian Kelly's got it going, but expectations are high.
Yeah, they are very high. And I think you're right. I think it's the Brian Kelly says this term transferable skills or transferable tangibles, right? And I think that is something that he's been able to maintain on his team and get kids that have those type of intangibles that can radiate and can be contagious. And so I think the locker room is essentially like winning a locker room over and changing a culture is what Brian Kelly was able to do year 1 and establish that in his program. So you're right. I don't anticipate an all-out rebellion if we lose to Florida State and it's like, well, we can't rebound ever. We've lost the locker room. Season's over. That's the edge that we have with this coaching staff and being led by Brian Kelly is that these kids will stay on track and right the ship, blah, blah, blah. With that being said, you don't have the depth at DB right now. You don't have Patrick Peterson or Morris Claiborne or, Tyrann Mathieu back there. You don't have Jalen Mills back there. I mean, like you have guys that need to prove themselves. And there's some holes there. Linebacker should be fine. Defensive line should be fine if they're available. I think it really comes down to how much can Jaden Daniels truly turn the corner and be a guy that will win you the games when the game is on the line, like he did against Alabama. Can he do that every single game for this entire season? And if he does, you will have a playoff team and he will be in New York.
Yeah, you have to hope that last year wasn't really a fluke and LSU is doing a great job of like preventing injuries and keeping these dudes healthy throughout the year, because outside of Maason Smith last year, I mean, this team was as healthy as you could ever ask for from a college football team for the most part through the entire year. And I think you definitely need that. Like you said, man, I mean, if we're getting DBs getting stingers left and right, missing games, breaking a leg, like that's when this team can run into some trouble. If you can stay clean, I think Daniels definitely needs to take that step. Like has potential to be the second, third, maybe even the best. Like this dude has potential to win the Heisman. If you can get the ball to Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, if you can run on people like you did last year, if you can hit Maason Smith over the middle for third downs to keep getting first, like this dude has potential to be not the best quarterback in LSU history, but pretty close to the top. And so it's like there's a lot up for grabs.
I think he needs to go from efficient to MVP, right? And I think right now he's extremely efficient and he knows how to keep the chains moving, but he has the ability to do way more than that. And to win a national championship, you need more than efficiency. If you look at JJ McCarthy highlights at Michigan, right? Like very talented player, but very efficient, and he runs the ball very well. Very similar to Jaden Daniels when it comes to the Big Ten version, obviously, but the expectations for this season, right? If JJ McCarthy can turn the corner a little bit and start being an MVP and not just a very efficient player for Michigan, Michigan's a playoff team that has a chance to win it. And I think LSU is in that same boat. If he can move from just being efficient to being the most valuable player when he's on that field, which he has the potential to be, this is a championship team.
I think it was Denbrock. It might have been Brian Kelly, but mentioned that last year wide receivers caught the ball with their back towards the end zone a lot, and that was just kind of what they had to do. And it's like open it up. If that progression, that year 1 to year 2 of understanding the playbook, being able to call your own checks on the line because you see it, like that's where this offense turns into like, oh yeah, Daniels can pick it up with his feet to like you got a weapon. And I think it was this week where they asked Brian Kelly about explosive plays, and he kind of talked about like explosive plays doesn't have to be chunking it up 50 yards down the field all the time. Like we need to get Malik Neighbors the ball in space. We need to be able to get Aaron Anderson on a crossing route where the safety goes the opposite way and all of a sudden this dude's got green field in front of him. Like if we can do that instead of just being, I don't know, it felt like I don't even know if basic or vanilla would be the term, but it felt like our offense was just very, very standard. Like you picked the base spread formation on NCAA, you ran the same few formations, the same plays. And it's like if it opens up and we're doing a lot more things and Daniel's comfortable with letting it rip, I think this team can go pretty far. And the nice thing is that if Daniels doesn't, if you have an Arkansas game where he's got 30 yards at halftime, you probably feel pretty comfortable putting in the other guy for a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have a very good quarterback room, but I think last season there was just a lack of confidence because we hadn't done it yet, right? People were still actively buying in as the season went on, and so I feel like if we can, like every play, for instance, we were kind of on our seat, at the edge of our seat, being like, oh shit, this could be a good completion. Oh shit, this could be a good run. Oh my God, like he kept it for 10 yards. Like it just so happened that the majority of those oh shits, we ended up clapping instead of being like, what the fuck are we doing? Yeah. And so it worked. I think now we need to turn the corner on being confident. Like that when we line up on the line of scrimmage on first down, every time Jaden Daniels, lets it rip, we know that this is going to be a first down. Right, like we're confident that if he's letting it rip, he's confident and he's making this maneuver to score. So,
and you got the best weapons you could ask for. I mean, I wouldn't trade our wide receivers room for anyone outside of Ohio State in the country. And I'm not even saying that's a definite.
No, and I think Ohio State, Florida State has an extremely talented wide receiver room, and I think LSU is right there. I think LSU's wide receivers, top to bottom, offer a lot of athleticism and experience and playmaking ability that is still untapped. Like I don't think we've seen the best version of Brian Thomas. We haven't seen the best version of Malik Neighbors yet.
And to be fair, like we only know for sure who's number one. Like I'm with you, like, I'm on the Brian Thomas train, but it's not like every time media is at practice, we're hearing about Brian Thomas, Maason dudes and one hand catching. It's like there's a lot of balls up for grabs. Malik Neighbors is going to get the lion's shares of it. It's going to be the Randy Moss ratio. We're 1 out of 3. We're giving this dude a chance. A lot of balls.
It's Sodom and Gomorrah at practice.
Peppering them with balls.
I heard this stat earlier this week. Malik Neighbors, where do you think he ranked in the SEC in receptions last year?
2.
He was first.
No, he was second in the country.
Yeah, he was first in the SEC, and in yards he was second. Like that's just crazy that we don't think of him as that guy. Maybe because the SEC has had less receivers, but
he's potentially the first wide receiver since Josh Reed to go back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons.
Wow. And that's the thing is you don't ever have that back-to-back, right? Like we have those glimmers of big-time seasons.
It's like, I wish Chase and Jefferson would have done this their freshman, sophomore years.
Right. And that's the thing is you have a chance for Malik Neighbors to take that next step. Now, what has been said a lot in some of these post practice videos and synopsis is, yeah, we can talk about fights. We can talk about Denver Harris. We can talk about the running backs, all that good stuff. But the whole like non-discussed, like, oh, well, yeah, like it's a thing around practice is like how dominant Malik Neighbors is right now. Like it's just something we kind of brush aside as like, yeah, he's doing great in practice. No, like Malik Neighbors has completely annihilated the defense the entire fall camp to a point where Shea and Brune were talking about how like they keep tallies of just like how many touchdowns and like it's kind of a joke on the sideline, like, yep, that's number 6. Like they go through how many times he's just dominating in the end zone. So I think Malik Neighbors is going to be the show pony for this offense this year. And it's nice to know that there's more than just him.
Yeah, it is weird to feel like it's like there's hype. There's definitely hype around Neighbors coming back, but I don't know. There's just not this feel of I think he's going to like outperform what people are thinking. It's like, oh, yeah, he's good, but he's not that big. He's not that fast. Yeah, he looked good. I don't know. It just has this weird vibe to it where we were just – and he's the 5-star guy. It's not like he came in underrated or anything. I don't know. It just feels like people aren't really giving him the credit yet.
Yeah, and I think that's Exactly right. And I think that's a mistake. I think Malik Neighbors is certainly somebody. I think because of his size and the fact that Jaden Daniels, I think is such a weapon with his legs, people aren't really thinking about having to rely just on Malik Neighbors, but he's going to have a hell of a season. We're
But if
anticipating.
but if I told you Aaron Anderson would be second leading receiver on this team, would you be shocked?
No.
What if I told you Chris Hilton would be the second leading receiver on this team?
I as of this
I would
week,
be
no.
shocked.
Now, I mean, like, yes, I'd be shocked as of a week ago. He's been tearing it up in camp, and as long as he stays healthy, the dude's going to be a horse.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. There's just a lot of guys out there that I think are gonna become the names that are through the SEC, where people talk about Alabama's wide receivers groups when they had Waddle and this guy and that guy and Smith and everything. Like we could potentially be looking at an early version. It's like, well, Malik Neighbors is the dude, but Brian Thomas is a first round pick. Chris Hilton's a second round pick. Aaron Anderson's going to be a dude in the league for 10 years.
So let's look back at the schedule and let's just kind of go through it. First game, obviously, everybody knows is Florida State. Florida State beat LSU last season. Mike Norvell is in his third year, or it's third or fourth, right? I think it's third. I was reading
Grant's stuff in the chat.
I'm going to go with third year of Mike Norvell, possibly the fourth. We'll see. But this is a team where they finally feel like they have their contender. They feel as if this is the team that can take them to the playoffs for the first time since 2013.
It has to suck as a Florida State fan to be like, we're finally back, and then we have to play a top 5 team to open up the season. Like, why the fuck did we do this?
Let's just cruise through the ACC and sneak into the playoffs.
This will be his fourth season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jordan Travis is an incredible quarterback. Let me just put that out there. He ended the season better than any other quarterback in the country outside of Caleb Williams. I think that Jordan Travis has elite speed. He's a fidgety dude. He's hard to keep under control. He's got a great arm, and they killed the transfer portal. They are loaded at receiver. They are loaded at tight end. They return a lot of their main big-time defensive players on the D-line, like Verse. He's a guy that ate up a first-game true freshman Will Campbell. Don't really know if that's worth bragging about. The kid just got done playing at Neville. You're supposed to be a top draft pick. You should kind of dominate him. Round 2, Campbell's a lot, more experienced now, and he's kind of the anchor of the O-line. But Verse is also an animal. So
let's tip off the NCAA. Maybe Jimbo gave that dude something 8 years ago.
Yeah, I think he did. He gave him a double cheeseburger. I think
I fully expect the game to be in question in the fourth quarter. Like I'll be pretty surprised if LSU's up 17 in the fourth and we have the ball and it's like, okay, guys, let's just run this sucker out and get out of here. Like I don't think that's gonna happen.
That means we had like a block punt or some weird shit like that.
No, it's not. Yeah, hopefully you would think the special teams luck would fall in our favor for that game. Like it would even out a little bit.
That's a coin flip game for me. I'm not going to sit here and be able to say win or loss. That I have them going 11-1, and there is 2 coin flip games for me. Obviously, it's Florida State and Alabama, and so I think out of these 2, these are the coin flip games. I think we win one, we lose one. I hate saying that because it's the first game. Like to take the wind out of the sails right in the beginning would be a tragedy. It'd be a sad day. It'd be a bad day.
It's a catastrophe. The thing that worries me, I think LSU could lose the Florida State game. I think they're gonna win. I think we'll be fine. What worries me more is how confident I am until we get to November. That's, I think, what worries me more, that you could slip up against an Ole Miss or even an Arkansas, because it just feels like, hey, guys, we got through Florida State. Let's cruise control this sucker till Army, and then we prepare for the national championship.
We had a potential playoff spot, and we just shit the bed against A&M, a 500 ball club, right? At any week, you could lose a game in the SEC. I mean, these dudes are very talented across the board. A&M is stacked with talent. Florida has this whole Billy Napier revenge bullshit. We're going to be coming off the Alabama game. Auburn's got Hugh Freeze, who at any given Saturday, he'll find a way to beat you. You got Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. I mean, and then you got Florida State to open the game. Like it's not easy, even outside of Florida State and Alabama. It's not a cakewalk.
But you look at it and you say LSU should be a multiple point, 3 to 10 point favorite, if not more, in every one of these games.
And that's the thing is, did we turn a corner as a culture and as a program where we're not worried about those teams anymore?
All business, Pete.
You're worried about Florida State and Alabama, right? Everybody else, you should be able to take care of business. We should not be having off weeks where we get beat by a team that only has 4 wins, right? And like that's where that's the difference between last season and this season. If we become a team that doesn't slip up at Ole Miss versus Auburn versus Florida versus A&M, like that is a championship team. If you don't fuck with those people, right?
If you think about the Tennessee game, we took that game off. Like we played awful in the first half and could never climb out of the hole.
But they were a great squad.
They were, but like
Tennessee's not on the schedule.
Yeah,
no, I know. I'm just saying from losses from last year, like we could have won that game. We just shot ourselves in the foot, and it set us back even more.
And but the thing is, and like Brett just said, tennis, like we don't have a
we don't even have that team.
Yeah. But with that being said, like we didn't really know how good Tennessee was until a few games into that year. We don't know a lot about these teams on our schedule right now. We don't know who Bama's quarterback is. We don't know if all of a sudden it's like, oh, fuck, here we go again. Nick Saban broke the recipe again, and we're back to running the football, and no one can stop the power, nowadays. Like we don't know what we're about to find out this season.
Weird things happen when you play at Ole Miss. I mean, for our lifetime, a lot of weird things have happened in that game, and shit, especially the Auburn game. So
it's like, hey, what if, like you're saying, the Ole Miss kid, they get the kid that transferred over from Oklahoma State, and now they have a solid quarterback that's going to run Lane Kiffin's offense accordingly, and it's a free-for-all. It's a shootout, and you're just like, we got fucked. We got sniped at Ole Miss. We were the team that they took out.
But it's just a collective, because if you look at all these games, you're like, man, LSU should beat Arkansas. They should definitely beat Ole Miss. Yep. Oh man, Auburn year 1, are you kidding me? They should beat Auburn. But also, it's not gonna completely blow my mind if they trip up in one of these games and we're just like, fuck, we let an opportunity go. Right. Now we have to beat Bama.
Yep, exactly. And that's the thing, is like we should not be in those situations with this team going into this season. That's what I'm banking on. I'm banking on we have turned that corner. I believe in this culture. I believe Brian Kelly has led enough day in and day out with the little details and the little things that the hay is in the barn, right? Like we are who we are, and we're going to be that team that's going to make a run, and you can't lose to the teams that you shouldn't lose to. Florida State, unfortunately, is one of those teams that is very equal with you, and they're in the same mindset of like, hey, this is the year we turn the corner, and we've got our Heisman contender, and we have our loaded backfield and receivers, and they have a coach that really has his job still on the line. Like if he fumbles this season, like he's fucked, right, with everything he has coming back. So huge game as an opener. We'll get way more into that next week as far as breaking down Florida State and giving our predictions. It is a coin flip. Obviously, my best case scenario is LSU goes 12-0, so I'm leaning LSU. I would put money on LSU if I had to bet the game.
If I had money
to bet it. But it is the coin flip game. Obviously, you've got Grambling, which is a W. At Mississippi State should be a W. 11 o'clock kick, kind of screwy, but should be a W. First year for Bozo.
Wake up early with those cowbells. Only played night games up until then. It's like weird things can happen. It's just like weird things can happen after dark. It's like weird things can happen in the 11 a.m. Big 10 kickoff.
But it's a W, right? And should be a W. Versus Arkansas at home should be a W. Yeah, they have a great quarterback, a great running back, a lot of mystery everywhere else. We should take care of business at home. You travel to Ole Miss, feisty environment, feisty game. Hopefully by then LSU is sitting there at 4-0, going on the road for the first time. Oh, going on the road now for the second time in the SEC, a little warmed up, and you've got, Lane Kiffin sitting there. That's a battle that should be a W. At Missouri should be a W. Then you come back home, middle of the season, hopefully sitting, 6-0 at that point, against Hugh Freeze and Auburn. I feel like this is your first oh shit game. I feel like this is the first time, and I know they're not very talented yet. Hugh Freeze will be a problem. It's probably not this year, but they will make plays. They will keep you involved because of coaching. This is not going to be a runaway. We're not going to run them out of our stadium.
Well, you could. Like, if LSU comes in ready to go,
it could also be a battle in the second half.
Daniels is that guy, then it's like, hey, man, let's put on a Heisman campaign. But if you come out flat and you're thinking like, oh, man, we just got to get through Army and then we got a bye week and then we prepare for Bama, that's when Auburn can snipe you. It is crazy to see that once you get to October, you leave Tiger Stadium twice.
Yeah. Yep. And, November is for contenders. So it's good to be home when we're trying to contend.
And with the way the SEC is going, this is the easiest schedule LSU will have from here on out under Brian Kelly.
And that's why I feel like you should have a win at Ole Miss, at Missouri, versus Auburn at home. You have a nice little, run-oriented Army game, which is a W. Then you got your bye to rest up, and you go on the road to Alabama, who we don't have a clue what Alabama team that we're going to see this season. This team could still be number 4 or 3, or they could be number 17 at this point. We really don't know. Regardless of where
that would be,
it would be phenomenal. I know several people that never give their bold predictions, but are hanging on the fact that this is the year that they go 7-5. They have a 7-5 Alabama team. I don't either, but I will quote Big Camp on this one. 2 things that Nick Saban does not do, right? He does not like to win on the road. He does not like Hugh Freeze, and he does not like Hugh Freeze or Jordan Hare Stadium. So you could potentially see an Auburn situation at the end of the year being another one of those teams that sneaks up on Alabama, in addition to LSU, Tennessee, Texas, A&M. I mean, like, Alabama does not have the easiest road this season. Do I think they're going in 7-5? Absolutely not. But do I think, regardless of what they are, whether they're 7-5 or 11-1, November 4th is going to be an absolute brawl. And LSU is going to get the best version of this Alabama team, and they're going to go out swinging for the fences, and LSU needs to be prepared on the road against Alabama. Alabama is going to do everything they can to prevent the overflowing momentum from the season before, and now going into it at 8-0. They're like, this is going to be the biggest juggernaut that they try to knock off to prevent a new era of the SEC being run by Georgia and LSU. This is a huge game, regardless of record for Alabama at that point in time. Toss up. It's a coin flip.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to see Alabama playing with nothing to play for.
Can he keep those guys together? Can he get them to play for nothing at Alabama? Or does it look like Swamp Kings year 2, where we're everything, we're everybody, and the minute we start losing, like, we lose the locker room, and Nick Saban doesn't have the fucking heart or willpower anymore to pull them out of that shit.
I'm not going to believe that, but I hope it's true. Obviously, LSU can lose the Alabama game, 1,000%. I feel confident. This is as confident as I've been in a while looking ahead at the Bama game. Every time I look at that Bama game, what worries me is looking at Florida right below it. It's like great that you get it at home, but like it does worry me that Bayou Billy's going to come down here with a 3-loss Florida team and just be able to have that magical night against a completely banged up, beat up LSU team. That's what worries me as much as, because going into Bama, we know we can lose. Like, in that game, you're going to sit around all day nervous as shit, but like, you know,
Shaking Buckeyes, man.
shaking the Buckeyes. But it's like, you know that when that game ends, like LSU could lose, and you'd be like, yeah, man, fuck, man, I wish we got that, but that was a good game. It's like losing to Florida the week after would be pain.
Florida at home, November 11th. Trap game, certainly potential for a big environment. Is it the end of the Billy Napier experiment? Like, is this the beginning of the end of the Billy Napier experiment whenever he plays LSU this late in the year? Or are they riding a high? Are they riding some momentum of knocking some teams off and the recruiting starting to pick back up? And Billy Napier's winning over the program and the student body and the school. And LSU is caught sleeping after a very, very difficult Alabama game. It's got all the makings for if Florida is trending, you're going to have to be wide awake for that game. If they are not, it's an easy victory. And so
Heisman, the next Tebow, that's what they're calling him.
I anticipate Florida being absolute garbage. I have Utah beating them, week 1. So I don't anticipate it being an issue. It should be a W. Georgia State's a W. And then the final game of the season will be an absolute drumming of Texas A&M at home to send Jimbo Fisher finally packing.
Yeah, I think I don't worry about the A&M game. It's like there's going to be people in that locker room that remember last year. So it's like they'll be up for that game.
So I think my prediction is that LSU makes it to Atlanta. I think we win the West again. And I think it is Georgia versus LSU for the SEC championship yet again. And we're playing for a playoff spot. I think Georgia goes undefeated and is in no matter what. I think LSU has one loss and needs to win to get in. Yep. That's where I see the season kind of wrapping up.
I'll tip my hand a tiny bit as what we're going to go through here next, but I tried so hard. To leave Georgia out of the Final Four, and I just couldn't.
You can't.
Like, I just kept pulling up pictures of Carson Beck looking like a Simpson character, and I just kept staring at it, and I'm like, this dude's going to be in the fucking playoff. Like, what a nightmare. I can't not pick them.
They are the most talented team top to bottom. They've recruited like monsters, and they've won the past 2 national championships back to back. You have to throw some respect on that. And then the fact that they yanked Oklahoma out of their schedule, the only like potential shakeup outside of the SEC, it's like, guys, they have such an easy schedule. The first like insane challenge that they're going to have is LSU in the SEC championship. Now, are there holes? Sure. But I think
Tennessee could be a game.
Tennessee could be a game. I mean, Auburn, who knows what's going to happen there. But that's it. I mean, like, if they should take care of business, right? And I think LSU is going to be a big challenge for them. It's not going to be the SEC championship we saw last season. I think this is going to be a bloodbath of an SEC championship. And hopefully by then LSU is humming. And by then Georgia has not been tested and we get to pounce on them. And regardless, they're in the playoffs. So it's really for LSU in their favor to get that victory. So you want to go through your top 10s?
Yeah, we can do that.
Let's get the graphic.
Yeah, while we get that graphic going up. Are you tired of fumbling through awkward conversations with your kid? Hold on, tell me when you're ready, Mike.
Touchdown. Tim Tebow's here to help you keep your family's online experience clean and safe. It's like having a quarterback for your internet, ensuring only family-friendly content makes the cut.
So, team, whether you're a parent or just believe in a clean online game plan, tune in to discover how Tim Tebow's parental control porn blocker is scoring big for families everywhere.
Let's keep it pure and play smart. Brought to you by Tim Tebow's parental control porn blocker.
Yeah, I would love to once again shout out to the sponsors. I'd love to go through some top 10s because there's a lot of coin flips. Like, it's just one of those things where there are so many teams jumbled. I think I probably put Bama higher than I even wanted to, but it was more of like a respect thing that it's like I can't put Penn State ahead of Bama. I can't put some of these teams there, so I'm just going to respectfully put them
and let's
rightfully up there.
Let's clarify this. We're going through our top 10 preseason polls. So this is not, I feel as if, if I have Ohio State at 4 or, I don't think that they're in the playoffs per se,
Yeah,
right?
things
I'll
can
get
happen.
into more. I'll get to
Mhm.
more of the playoff talk, but like going into the season before any of the games are played, this is who I believe is the top 10 teams.
Yeah, I kind of just felt like who I would trust if I were betting on these teams against the one below it. Who would I take?
Grant, do you have them both all together, or do you have one,
No,
I
two,
think
yeah,
two?
no, they're like Mike's top 10, Brett's top 10.
separate
Okay,
but equal.
okay.
So
Um,
we can switch back and forth, Ray Allen style, if we need
sure,
to.
sure. Why don't you
Um,
just bring them
we
both up?
can, yeah. I don't. Oh shit! I don't know if I can do that.
Brett can go first.
I can go first. Number
Yeah,
10.
Okay, I like that.
Brett's number 10. It's in order of first to. It's 1 to.
You can read. You can't put it up. Wait, you have them individually?
Yeah, it starts
You're
from
gonna
your
click.
number 1 through 10.
Okay, so we're okay. I was gonna go like build some suspense, but
We
Damn.
didn't rehearse all that.
Can you?
That's all right.
All right.
I mean, number one is the reigning defending. Like, I mean, if you, it's a lie if you don't put Georgia as your number one team. Even if you think someone's gonna take the throne and beat them, I think you have to have Georgia as the preseason number one. Some question marks, lost some people. Obviously, going to be breaking in a new quarterback, but I mean, looking at that schedule, it's just like Georgia's going to be around.
Mhm.
Number two, it was the respect play. I put Alabama as number two because I couldn't in my heart I couldn't put Michigan ahead of them. I couldn't put Ohio State ahead of them. I think Alabama's going to have as bad a year as they've had in a while. Whether that's 2 losses, 3 losses, they're still going to be a good team. But
Mhm.
this was just fully a respect play, putting Alabama at number 2. Number 3, I went into my inner Mike and I just said, let's go Harbaugh in Michigan because I think they
You
will
have
be
to.
the team. Yeah, I mean, they've been in the playoffs 2 years in a row. Jim Harbaugh has kind of built what he's wanted to build there. I think they deserve to be the first team. Like, they deserve to be over Ohio State. And then kind of in that same thing, I had Ohio State at number 4, and I was like, I think LSU is going to be better than Ohio State. So why wouldn't I put LSU as the number 4 team?
Respect.
What has Ohio State done to prove to me that they should be in that spot kind of thing? It's like when you're taking straw polls at your scrimmage on who the quarterback is and each position coach has a different answer, it's like I'm going to lean on LSU in that scenario. I think Ohio State's got a pretty favorable schedule, can, maybe end up higher ranked than LSU, but I think LSU deserves the spot here. And then I have Ohio State 5. I just don't know what to do with Ohio State. It's like you can't put them any lower than 5 because it's disrespectful to who would be below them. But I also feel like I can't put them any higher. So number 6,
Yeah, that works.
Number 6, I put Florida State. Maybe I wanted to drum up the drama a little bit, but also it's like when you look at it, USC would be the next team. So I have USC at 7, but it's like I think I trust Florida State more than I trust USC.
At this point on, 6 through 10 is kind of just like what do you remember from the year before that's really sticking out the most? What do you think's going to carry over? Because Florida State could beat USC, USC could beat Florida State. I'm sure your list is very maybe not that similar.
They're 8 through 10. You guys have completely different.
Okay, all right.
10s, which is pretty funny.
I don't even know. I think I would possibly take USC if they were playing Florida State week 1, but I just don't know that I trust USC's defense. Like when you actually need them, I think Oregon is probably like the premier Pac-12 team and not USC, just because we don't know what they are on the defensive side of the ball. But Caleb Williams may just backpack them to a playoff.
Be a fun game, Florida State versus USC this year.
Number 8, I put Penn State because I had no idea what to do with Penn State. And your boy Josh Pate keeps talking them up, so they're in my head. And I'm like, well, I mean, it would be nice. It would be nice to have Penn State beat one of these Michigans or Ohio State. So I think I just talked myself into getting them right there.
I have Penn State at 13.
It's hard.
I don't know enough to validate that. I know enough about 3 other teams or 4 other teams more than I know. And I think right now it's like, wait, where did they come from? Like all of a sudden they're in the conversation for like the top 10 teams. So I'm sure it's substantiated to an extent, and they're probably very good. I just haven't seen enough to like know why.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just like you look at those teams in that range, and I'm just like, do I feel comfortable putting Texas over Penn State? Like, I think I have Penn State in that spot. Mike's grinning because that's exactly where he has Texas.
Texas is a team, man. Texas, this could be the year.
And that's fine. Like I think I'm on that train, but I'm not giving you a top 10 because Texas is back.
I
Go
get
prove
it.
it.
I get it.
Go
I get
fucking
it.
beat Alabama week 2, and I'll put your ass at 5 in my polls.
Yep.
Put your ass at 2 in my polls.
If they beat Alabama, that's a playoff team.
Yeah,
that's all they need.
But it's like, I don't know. I don't think Texas deserved a spot. And then 9 and 10, I went Tennessee and Oregon because it's the teams that I think could be the rowdy teams people aren't talking about. I think Oregon is your dark horse to get in the playoff. They decently favorable schedule. Bo Nix coming back, which is still such a weird thing to say. I think they lost a lot of their offensive line, but it's just like I could see Oregon being that team, and I think they even did it last year, where it's like, guys, we got one game, and we're right where we want to be.
I think Dan Lanning is a very good coach.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to looking at the teams below, and you'll probably get into some of them. I just didn't feel like.
Yeah, who are your other 5?
I'd have to look it back up. I was told to do 10. I did 10. I did not do any extra credit. I did not do any brownie points.
You have anybody on the cusp? Is there one team that you were like, I want to put them in there, but I just couldn't?
I mean, probably Texas.
Yeah.
Do you want your final 4 now or after Mike does his 10?
Clemson, like, dude, I can't put Washington. Like, we're gonna fucking put Washington in our top 10s. Like, I love Penix. I think Washington could be awesome, but like, we're talking about probably the 3rd, maybe the 4th if you count Utah, best team in that conference. And I'm gonna put them 10. Like, I can't do that.
Too hard. It's too hard to split up. I agree. USC is in there because of the coaching, the transfer portal, and the Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, like, you have to be able to respect that. I think Oregon is right there for me. They're right there. They're the dark horse pick that I have in the Pac-12, but there's just a couple other teams, in my opinion, that are a little bit more proven that kind of prevented that from happening, but they're right on the cusp there. Let Brett go ahead and do your final 4, and then I'll go through my top 10 and do a final 4.
Clemson was probably the other one that it felt weird leaving off.
Yeah.
But I don't think they deserve it. Go prove it, Dabo.
Well, I think they, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know we needed finals and champion.
No, you gave me that.
I gave you final 4.
Right. So I don't have, neither one of y'all gave me champions.
Yeah, it's hard to call. I just playoff potential.
So
I hate mine. Like, looking at it now, if it wasn't on a graphic, I would change it. My final 4, I have Michigan 1, LSU 2, UGA 3, USC 4. Even though I think that they would split LSU and Georgia, it just didn't. I didn't feel like USC deserved to be anything other than 4. And again, I'm like so close to putting Oregon, but I didn't want to be like Desmond Howard and look like a complete goober putting like Baylor in my finals.
That's like these 4. It's diverse enough to be like, oh, that's cool. That's interesting. Michigan, LSU, and USC, like, that's very interesting. But it's also realistic enough to be like, that could happen. Like, these teams are all rated.
Seeing Georgia beat the shit out of Kiffin, not Kiffin, fuckface, whatever his name is, Lincoln Riley, would be so sweet.
Yeah, just nonstop. Like, he can't get over the hump. Just a fake, just a fraud.
It's like, the jokes would be great. It's like, oh, you went out west and still couldn't win a playoff game. Like, that's what I'm here for. I think that's probably why I put him in that spot.
I like that. Good 4, good top 10. All, I think the only one that's kind of like, what are we doing here is Penn State, but like the whole country's doing that. So I understand that. And who knows? I think apparently they're super talented and they have a really good quarterback coming back, and they're in the Big Ten. Anything can happen.
I have a feeling it's going to be a 3-way shootout where it's like Michigan's going to beat Penn State, but Penn State's going to beat Ohio State. Like, I have a feeling it's going to like round robin that 3 in the Big Ten this year for the first time in a while.
I could see that. I think where my biggest difference with you, and we'll get into it here in the top 10, Go ahead. Throw it up.
Are you
And,
tired of your kids? Oh, wait, no.
and of course, this is, again, completely meaningless, but this is just kind of fun to do, and we'll see what happens. But I agree. I think the number one team in the country, you have to put Georgia there. If you're not putting Georgia there, you're just angry and biased. And Georgia is the king of college football right now until somebody can knock them off. Not only did they win back-to-back national championships led by Stetson Bennett, they appeared in multiple before that, right? I mean, like they competed in the playoffs year in and year out. They lost the national championship. They got over the hump and won back-to-back. They return a plethora of defense that is just stellar. They have all the tools and weapons they need from recruiting.
Recruited better than any team in the country over the last 3 years.
And they have a cakewalk schedule. Your number one team is Georgia. Number two, I got Michigan. I think this is finally the put up or shut up year. I don't think it gets any better at this point for Jim and Michigan. Their offense is very, for the Big Ten, it's kind of flashy in a sense. Like the Big Ten kind of makes it feel as if it's gimmicky, and it works there, and they can out scheme other people. And JJ McCarthy is actually a very good quarterback. And, you know, I like the point that Josh Pate made, is that this team is so deep and so experienced. They've had a really good resume. I mean, they were, where were they? 12-1 or 12-2 the year before.
Yeah.
And then 13-1 last season. Like, this team has seen success, and the starters are now back in a position where they're coming back. The Power Football Index talking about returning production. They're right up there towards the top. I think they might even be number one. They're in the Big Ten. They have an easy schedule. I think this is making up for a Michigan-Ohio State showdown at the end of the year, just like the past two seasons, which is great for college football. I love to have some parity up there in the Big Ten, and it's nice to see some of the traditional powers and blue bloods kind of get some steam.
That schedule is fucking disgusting.
It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. So take care of your business, and you're in the playoffs.
For the last 2 years, Michigan's walked into the playoff, and I thought they've had zero chance of winning the whole thing. Can that step be you have a chance? Like, that's what I want to see from Michigan, because it's like there was an obvious difference between them and Georgia, and obviously they lost to TCU, whatever. But it's like that team wasn't beating Georgia either. Like, can you field a team that maybe gives you some confidence going up against that top SEC team? Right.
And so I think with all the returning starters, with the success they've had the past two seasons, you know, yeah, they got blown out by Georgia, but, you know, honestly, who didn't, right? And so I feel as if Georgia 1, Michigan 2. This is where it gets a little crazy. I have Ohio State at number 3. And
Big Ten Mike at it again.
The reason I have Ohio State at number 3 is that I think they have the best receiving core in the nation. I do think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably one of the best receivers we've seen come out of college in a little bit of time now, like well-rounded all across the board. He reminds me of, you know, some of those Bama receivers we saw about 3 or 4 years ago, where it was just one after the other. That's the type of kid they have. They also have a huge amount of, 5-star talent at wide receiver with him. It's not just Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, they're loaded. They also returned 2, you know, all Big Ten running backs. They got one of their dudes to come back for his senior year.
They have another 1,000-yard receiver coming back, Ibuka.
Yeah.
When Ohio State looks right, they look like the best team in the country. It's like when they're clicking, it's like, how do these guys lose?
Yeah.
And then when it goes bad, it just looks bad. They don't know.
That's the issue. And so it's a coin flip. In my opinion, it's like, okay, do you throw Bama up there at top 3? Do you put Ohio State up there at top 3? Do you go with LSU because you're more confident in what we have with at quarterback? You know, and so I had to give a little bit of respect more towards Ohio State because of the receiving core. I can't tell you Bama's team right now, right? Like, I can't, like, the only guy, Dallas Turner is a really good jack linebacker. They have a really good running back committee.
Milrow, yeah.
And they have a talented true freshman safety. You know, it's like and they dropped the ball the past couple seasons, right? It's like they haven't really turned that corner. They're not They don't have anybody at quarterback that's proven coming back. Ohio State is a little bit more talented when it comes to experience. There's a lot of unknowns with Alabama. They could all be studs and they could be great, but Ohio State has those studs returning. The one empty nester there, the one caveat is their quarterback. Kyle McCord is supposed to be their guy, and now a week ago it started the chatter that it's still up for grabs, and the 4-star kid that's a sophomore, I forgot his name, is now leading. So, like, they don't even have a quarterback yet. Thankfully, they play Indiana, Youngstown, Western Kentucky, and then they get a challenge against Notre Dame, right? And so they have several weeks to kind of figure out who their quarterback is. I don't have Ohio State finishing in the playoffs. I don't think this is the team that truly sees it through the end, but I feel as if Ohio State is going into the season a top 3 team. My number 4 team is LSU. I've got LSU sitting at number 4. Enough can't be said from us about the excitement and momentum that we're feeling with Brian Kelly. If this team had a proven Denver Harris that was ready to roll at DB next to a 4th-year Ricks, back there at DB, and, Maason Smith's healthy, and, Jaden Daniels is a guy that, lit it up last year and didn't drop the ball against Texas A&M. And we had, one
Texas A&M.
This could be a top 2 team coming into the season. I think respecting them in the top 5 is giving them a huge ovation. And I think putting them at 4 is probably the highest you'll ever see them. And obviously this is coming from an LSU themed podcast, so some goggles on here, but I think LSU is certainly a playoff contender. So put them at top 4. The 5th team is Alabama. I think there's more holes and weaknesses in Alabama's team right now than anyone above them in the top 4, but they do have Nick Saban, and they do have a proven track record of figuring it out, changing culture, changing direction. This is a new era. This is a new team. Like, this is not the days where you can just rah-rah and do mat drills and get these kids to buy in. These are all 5-star kids. Half of them are not from around the region. What happens when they get punched in the face? What happens when they don't have Bryce Young to bail them out of every game that they're close in up until the last minute, right? And so what are we going to see from this team? Unknowns equal, unknowns equals top 5. Like, that's the amount of respect I can give them, is like, you're in the top 5 because of who you are. Everything else is just based on what you were. So we'll see. Number 6, I have USC. I think USC certainly has the potential to make waves and do a lot of damage this season. Lincoln Riley, whether you love him or hate him, he's a very good coach, and he knows how to score points. He's in the Pac-12, really the Big Ten now, but he's out there on the West Coast. He's finally got a year under his belt, a successful first year, got a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback to return. And he's got a very, very loaded roster with transfers. Again, a lot of unknowns, but you have to side with coaching and side with the talent. And right now they are very talented and talented enough for a top 10. It's hard to gauge 6 through 10, in my opinion. I side with the Heisman Trophy winner. He's going to make some plays. I differ.
You're also not going to know what the fuck USC is until mid-October,
but at that point, shit gets real for them, and so that's why I think there's a lot of talented teams, and you're looking right at them in the Pac-12 that are sneaky good. Oregon's very good. They're a fringe top 10 team, in my opinion. They could be the dark horse. Washington has a very talented offense that will go back and forth with USC. What defense is going to show up that game? I got Utah beating Florida. Utah, I mean, you want to talk about physicality. Like, that's a team that will punch you in the mouth, that can contend with SEC teams when it comes to, they can't do it week in and week out. But if you need to build yourself up for one game, I'll take that coach and that 7th-year quarterback and Utah any day of the week. So I don't have USC running the gauntlet, and I actually don't have them making the playoffs, because I think they're going to drop 2 of these games, or they're going to drop 1 here, and then they're going to have to play Utah again. And Utah beat them twice last year, right? Yeah. So I think there's a chance that they lose 2 games, and that, for a Pac-12 team, knocks them out. So But I think going into the season, they are owed respect, top 6. Number 7, I've got Florida State. I think Florida State deserves to be in that mix. They could be at 6. This is the same boat I was in with you. You know what, Louis T, FSU by 20? I don't think so, my friend. I don't think so. I think this is a very tight game, but 20 points is a little high. Maason Smith is not a 20-point swing. We're still good. We're still going to be good. Anyway, with that being said, Florida State's a tremendous program right now. They've got a lot of momentum. They haven't proven shit. They haven't won shit. And so I think there's a lot of unknowns, just like USC. You could flip-flop either of those teams. You could flip-flop Alabama out today. We'll see what they look like eventually. Number 8.
Well, it is kind of crazy that everyone's just like fully cool with like putting Florida State so high when they really haven't done anything.
No, they haven't done anything.
I think they're going to be good.
And they finished strong. But
it's just like we just talk.
They also lost 3 games in a row last year.
Yeah, exactly. We just talk with such certainty that Florida State is like, well, I mean, they're just right back where they. I mean, give me Bowden back, baby.
I agree, and I think it's
a confident fan base right now.
Yeah, and it should be.
My bosses. I haven't talked about this the whole day, and we'll get into it next week, I'm sure. My boss is a Florida State guy, and he's old. I'm like cringe asking him about what he thinks about the matchup. I kind of briefly asked him, and he's like, "Yeah, we're like." And I was like, "All right, I'm sorry I asked." Like,
that's good. Compliment.
I was trying to be friendly about it and be like, you know, it's gonna be a battle, man. He's like, "What do y'all? We have a Heisman quarterback." Like, he's like, "Where's your quarterback?" I'm like, well, the odds say ours is actually second to last year.
The only one that did anything against y'all the year before was that quarterback, and he's coming back.
And I was like, I got to stop this conversation before it gets out of hand.
Before I get fired.
So, yeah.
Florida State has every reason to be confident, but it's like, man, a different team is walking into that stadium. Jersey's going to be the same. That's it.
They could have ran away with that game last year, and they didn't, and we choked. But
my next team is Tennessee.
I digress.
I think Tennessee is definitely a top 10 team. I like Josh Heupel. I think he's a good coach, and I don't think it was a fluke. I think 11-2 is a hell of a year for Tennessee. I don't think they're as good, but are they a top 10 team going into the season? Can they knock off somebody? Can they have a battle against Alabama? Yeah. Can they have a battle against Georgia? Sure. I mean, like that's certainly some games where you're going to have to be tested. They do have a lot of returning talent. And I don't think it's a fluke. I think that is a very good football team. And my number 9 is Texas. I think Texas at number 9 is horns up right now. I think it sucks with recruiting. I hate seeing Texas get better because obviously them entering the SEC, it's like now all of a sudden our best players. I mean, hell, you know, you're in recruiting battles, not with just A&M anymore. You know, for Texas kids, you got to deal with University of Texas, and there is no fan base that over exaggerates their abilities like Texas. And so the minute like you get them with any momentum, it's tough to stop. And so Texas has a very, very, very good roster coming back. I don't know much about their defense. That's always been kind of the question mark. But coming into the season with Quinn Ewers, they have one of the receivers is a absolute beast. Look at that schedule outside of Alabama. Like if they take care of business, this should be the best team in the Big 12 by a long shot. And I think the biggest battle is at Alabama. If you can get past Alabama, this team has a legit chance at the playoffs. So I think getting them in there in the top 10, I think based off of what you saw from Quinn Ewers in that offense when they were humming at full potential, if you can get that full potential back coming into the season, it's a top 10 team.
I agree. You're just going to have to prove it to me. Like, you're going to have to prove it to me that you're not going to go lay an egg against K-State or Baylor or some team like that. It's like yeah, it's easy to say like get by Bama and you're cruise controlling, but it's like we've seen these Texas teams just fall on their face forever, and it's like you're just gonna have to prove it before I can like get on that bandwagon.
I don't think Sark is
I'd rather be late to that train than the only
sure.
one on it.
I get that. I don't think this is a national championship program. I think Sark is not a national championship coach. I don't think he can keep a locker room together unless he just completely dominates recruiting and top to bottom defense, special teams, offense, best quarterbacks every year coming out of Texas. Like if he can get that going, they'll win a national championship. But I don't see him being able to do that and competing with recruiting at that level with Georgia, Bama, and the likes of those in Ohio State. I do think, though, every couple of years, they're going to have a 5-star quarterback with a well-run offense that can knock off some teams. And if their schedule goes right, they can make the playoffs. And I think this is that first year that Sark is going to be able to be that, oh, he can make a playoff, right? He might not be a guy that can win a national championship, but Sark can make a playoff. And this is the best team he's had to do that yet. Lastly, sneaking in, I have Clemson. I have Clemson as a top 10 team just because I don't want to be the guy that sits back and be like, oh yeah, we were kind of quick to like throw them to the curb, right? Like I might not have them as a playoff team, but like they're still extremely talented. They have a 5-star quarterback that is returning now for his second year in Cole Klubnik. They have a really good running game. They have studs across the board at O-line. The receivers are talented. Their defense has always been good enough to get through the ACC. And I mean, they're in the ACC. Like if they are who they think they are, if Dabo can get this rebounded, they beat Florida State September 23rd. It's pretty much smooth sailing right till the end of the year. So I'm giving a little bit of respect to the past, kind of like what you did with Alabama. This is kind of my ode to Dabo and Clemson of like, this is your last chance. Yeah. I'm throwing you in the top 10.
No, I agree. It didn't feel good leaving Clemson out of my top 10. That was the one you kind of look at. You're like, they're still king until the Seminoles can actually throw that spear into the ground.
Right. And so could they have a couple of years where they were just kind of rebuilding and they still won 9 or 10 games? Like, sure. And this is their rebound year. Like that, I mean, they won 11-3 last year. And like, we're acting as if, although they did get their ass kicked by Tennessee. And that's why I have Tennessee in that respect range of like, hey,
the rumors of my demise were greatly exaggerated.
Right. So right outside of the top 10, I've got a handful of schools that were just on the cuff. Any of these 5, somebody has them around 10, and that's Oregon. I have right on the edge right there. Washington, if the hype is real, I think they could itch into a top 10 team. I don't think it's a playoff team, but I think they could contend. Penn State, who knows? But obviously there's enough out there to warrant close to a top 10. Utah and Notre Dame. I think those are your final 15 to kind of round it out.
Yeah. No, I agree. You can't put Notre Dame in your top 10. Like,
No.
can't do it. No. They're going to be around there. They could end up
will
being
be
in the
because
top
the
10
voters
team.
have no choice.
Well, I think they could be around the top 15 legitimately. And if they win a game that, if they beat Ohio State, like, yeah, they'll vault into like the top 8,
I find myself liking Marcus Freeman, even though he spurned us, which was, again, the right decision. I find myself liking him. I kind of want Notre Dame to do okay.
If it wasn't Notre Dame, I would probably pull for that program. Like I would pull for Marcus Freeman and be like, this is a good story. Like he was, shoved into a head coaching position for the first time and it's fucking Notre Dame, like coming off the heels of Brian Kelly. Like that's a tough gig, And so, yeah,
they have an interesting schedule to get in the playoff,
No, if they make the playoffs, they obviously earned it to an extent. Actually, now that I'm looking at this, Ohio State's there. Yeah. So Ohio State, USC, Clemson, those are your big games, right? And if you're Notre Dame, that's all it really takes. You win those big games, and obviously you're probably number 1 in some of these voters' eyes.
Should be a really fun USC Notre Dame game, a little tradition, bring it back.
So my playoff predictions, and I didn't actually decide on one of them in particular, but I've got LSU in the playoffs against I got Georgia getting in there playing Michigan. Because I think LSU beats Georgia in the SEC championship. Georgia falls down to 4. And I think Michigan is probably sitting there at number 1. I don't know because we might have a loss. Michigan's undefeated, whatever. Georgia, Michigan, LSU gets in the playoffs. And I think we play either Texas or Clemson. I can't.
That's disgusting, Michael. That is disgusting.
Well, I'm gonna talk it out here. These are my 2 options. If Texas beats Bama, I feel like they are good enough and they have the path where they're in the playoffs versus LSU. Clemson, if Clemson returns to the Clemson of old, I think their path is clear to the playoffs. I think USC obviously is a better team. I think Tennessee is a better team. But I just think the road to the playoffs is a little too rocky for me to be confident. I think it's down to these 2. And if I had to pick one, I'm probably going with a Clemson rematch. I've got LSU, Clemson, Michigan, Georgia.
Yeah, it's so.
But I had to tip my cap to Texas there a little bit.
It's disgusting. I'm appalled by what I just saw.
It could happen, man. That's a bold predict. That's a bold.
No, it's not. It's not when you put 5 in your 4. It's not a bold prediction when you put 5 teams in 4 spots.
Then you know what? Texas. That's the prediction. LSU versus Texas in the playoffs for the
Rose Bowl.
The Rose Bowl. I've got Georgia and Michigan getting the New Orleans Sugar Bowl slot.
Yeah, Clemson is one of those teams that you're like, man, I don't really have a ton of faith in them, but like they could be in the playoff. Like they could get there pretty easy. I would feel way more confident than them over Texas.
Both of your playoffs, I guess, technically mean, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean this, but it means we probably win or lose. Like we play Georgia in the SEC championship and then we both get in.
Or Alabama, or we have lost to Alabama. They have another loss somewhere else, and then they lose the SEC championship to Georgia, and we sneak in late.
That would be the ideal scenario, to not even show up to Atlanta. Yeah. Let Alabama and Georgia play out, but that would suck, like having our lives in Georgia's hands with Nick Saban as one last hurrah.
Yeah. So could Bama could any of these teams make the playoffs? I think all of them could make the playoffs outside of
Penn State.
Well, Penn State, maybe Tennessee. They're not making the playoffs. Maybe USC, Florida State. I don't know.
I mean, what do we have?
Like, they can get in.
We have like what, 12, maybe 13 teams. I think we have 12 combined. Yeah. Your Final Four is coming from this 12.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's safe to assume late August, we're sitting here looking at what's going to be your Final Four in some fashion out of this crew.
Like if Notre Dame, if Utah, I think those would be like shocking to
Oregon sneaking in would be. I mean, actually, you have them in their 10. In the 10, I forgot. Oregon State is a team with Uyunglele. He just transferred over there. Like, are they going to make a surprise run in the Pac-12 and screw some people over? No, but you know, you never know. Is Wisconsin going to be the dark horse in the Big Ten? You know,
I was so in on Wisconsin until I saw today the dude singing Taylor Swift in front of the team, and I was like, I'm out, boys. I'm out. Like I'm watching Brandon Spikes like eat people. I'm watching Tim Tebow paint his going blackface for midnight workouts, and then this dude singing Taylor Swift. Like I'm out.
You could make a story and say that North Carolina decides to wake up with Drake May, Heisman contender, probably the top quarterback pick in the draft coming up for an NFL QB. North Carolina?
Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I mean maybe. I don't know. You know how some teams like to throw that around.
What's crazy is
North Carolina, Texas would be such a great, unbelievable Final Four game to watch.
A good basketball game. I was looking back at last year. Tennessee was not ranked in the top 25 in the preseason.
Right. We didn't know, you know? So, but I think.
And TCU probably wasn't either.
Well, okay. Can you pull up the preseason top 25 from last year?
Yeah. Let's see.
Just out of curiosity.
We gotta get to that 2-hour mark somehow. So let's just look up. Let's just look up. No, Mike's fine.
I know, but did he fall out?
No.
Where is he?
Hey, don't worry about it.
Shut up.
Oh.
got like a million screens in front of you. You know where I'm at.
Wait, where's the,
Still a podcast.
I need the freaking preseason. All right, let's see.
Do you not have? I thought you were just looking at this.
No, I just knew off top because I had already researched it.
Okay. Well,
yeah, we don't need to dig through. We're an hour and 45 minutes in here.
Preseason.
We've turned into the Joe Rogan. Turned into the Joe Rogan experience. 3.5 hour pods on with Alex Jones.
Wait, hold on.
I can't hold on any longer. I would assume
that's
Alabama.
It.
Okay. So Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, flop. Notre Dame, flop. Michigan, A&M, flop. Utah, not a top 8 team after it was all said and done. Oklahoma, flop. Baylor, flop. Oklahoma State, flop.
Baylor.
Oregon, flop. Yeah, I mean, wow.
NC State hovered in the top 25. I did research that.
What a vanilla
Michigan State, flop.
This was like going into it being like, okay, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Alabama.
Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Houston, like none of those teams. Kentucky kind of flirted in there for a while, then they shit the bed. So did Wake Forest.
I don't know. I kind of feel it's weird, man. Like looking at our top 10 going into the season, I'm like, I feel like if I looked at this list, I'd be like, yeah, actually, no, I remember being bullish on Baylor, to be honest with you.
Is this real?
Yeah, I mean, dude, we forget Aranda had it going for a minute.
Yeah, and then Oklahoma was returning a lot of players. Yeah, it was the first year of Venables, but we thought at least they'd be in the top 10.
I am interested we got to keep an eye on Oklahoma because
they could be that little one that comes through and just like, I remember us. Like we're still very physical, good, talented football team.
Or they can be as bad as they've ever been in a 2-year stretch walking into the SEC.
Yeah, very.
Wait, they're not even. Oh yeah, they're ranked 20th. They're ranked 20th this year in the preseason.
Back so long ago when Venables was the defensive coordinator for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Holy
Bobby,
are you tired of fumbling through awkward times?
Touchdown. Tim Tebow's here to save the day. I think that's a show. That's a pod.
Yeah, I think an hour 45 will do it.
Yeah, I'm starting to sweat. Need some water.
Do the Twitter, do the thumbs up, do all that stuff.
Yeah, share the show.
Gold Mike. Share the show with your friends. Like we're here. This is
last year's Heisman contenders.
If you've been hanging out with us for this entire almost 2 hours, be the guy or girl that shares this with your buddies. All right.
Thanks for the Florida State fans for showing up. Show this off to your Florida State fans. Get them pissed off, riled up, talk shit.
Florida State sucks, dude. We're gonna beat their ass.
I'll be there, guys. Boots on the ground coming to you next week. We'll be potting from.
All right, over now.
Congrats.